What's up, Predator fans? It's the Emerald Enthusiast back with another action figure review. This time I'll be looking at the Neca, Emissary 1 and Emissary 2 figures, as well as the Fugitive Predator figure from the 2018 movie The Predator. Here's a look at the figures still in the packages. The Emissary Predators were going to be in the movie originally, but they were cut from the film. Nonetheless, I still think that these are interesting looking figures. The packages are very similar, but let's get a look at the individual details. Here is a look at Emissary 2. As you can see, it says so on the bottom of the packaging. These figures are intended for ages 17 and up. It says the Predator on each side of the packaging. And here on the inside flap, we get this action shot of the figure. And here is the figure itself as seen through the front window of the box. Each one of these figures comes with a plethora of accessories. And I really do like this packaging overall. And on the back, we get numerous product shots of the figure. The back of the packages feature a brief description of the movie. This is identical on all three packages. If you would like to read this, just hit pause and do so now. And here's a look at Emissary 1. I've seen some Predator fans refer to these Yautja as the GI Predators. Again, this packaging is very similar to the one that I just showed you. And on the inner flap, once again, we get this really cool action shot, and we can see the figure and all of its accessories through the front window of the package. Here's a look at the Fugitive Predator. I lucked into this at a Target, and I was very happy to have done so. Of the three front shots on the packages, this is definitely my favorite. I really like how mysterious and foreboding it looks. And once again, we see the figure in this really cool action shot on the inner flap of the package. That looks really good. And here is the Fugitive Predator as seen through the front window. And I really can't wait to get a look at those blade accessories. And with no further ado, let's bust open these packages and see what's inside. Let's have a look at the accessories for the two Emissary Predators. And here we get these two rifle accessories. To my eye, at least, these are identical. And I really do like the sculpting and the paint application on these. These look very realistic. So I am impressed by these. And here we see the alternate sets of hands. And you can certainly tell the difference when it comes to the details of these between the two Yautja. These are the Emissary 1's alternate hands. The paint applications on the fingernails are outstanding. And here we see the alternate hands of Emissary 2. And both of these come with fists as well as a gripping hand for the rifle. So I am thankful for that. But of course, that's not all we get with these figures. And here are the alternate heads with the biomasks. And when I saw these in the packaging, initially I thought these were the same because the masks are so similar. However, they are not the same. You can clearly see which one goes to which emissary. You can see the detail back here on the back of the heads. The paint detail lets you know. Here's a look at the Predlocks, and although these are accurate to the Yautja, they do kind of get in the way when you're trying to change out the heads because they're so thick. And I really appreciate this gunmetal gray paint on the biomasks. That looks very attractive. Speaking of alternate heads, here is the unmasked head of the Fugitive. And these locks are not as pliable but nonetheless, I'm impressed overall with the work here. The paint applications are nice and tight. The texture makes it look organic. My only issue is I feel like the eye sockets are too small for screen accuracy, so there could have been some slight improvement in that area. And here we see the Yautja out of the boxes and ready to rumble. These Predator figures are definitely different than anything we've seen previously in the NECA line, but that should still appeal to many Predator collectors. So let's take a closer look at the loose details now. Let's have a look at the two emissaries now. And as you can see, these are similar, but there are some key differences as well. I really like this motif here with the camouflage pants. The paint applications on these are outstanding, as is the sculpting work. You can see there's a lot of pouches. There's a lot of texturing here, both on the skin as well as the clothing. Remember that these Predators were initially going to help the Fugitive Predator fight off the upgrade Predator, so I think it makes sense for them to have a human military motif. Once again, this paint work is outstanding. The skin on the feet is very rough and otherworldly looking. And even though these pants are plastic, they actually look like fabric. So I am very impressed by that. Now let's have a look at the torsos. And these flak jackets or battle vests, whatever you'd like to call them, they are separate pieces. However, I don't see a way to remove them. Now, I know some collectors get very creative and wiggle these things off, but I'm not going to try to do that. You can see the skin underneath this midsection part here. And I'll turn this figure around and move the predlocks to let you see the detail back here. Again, NECA really doesn't cut any corners when it comes to the details. These are obviously collector-centric figures. And here's a look at the torso on Emissary 2. This one doesn't have quite as much paint, but there's excellent sculpting on the abdominals. I really appreciate how alien this skin looks with all the detail along the arms. Speaking of the arms, let's get a closer look at those now. And here we see the detail on these open palm hands. And I really appreciate the paintwork on that. The forearm gauntlets look amazing. I really like that silver paint choice. Now, I will say that these shoulder pieces do hinder the articulation in the arms somewhat, and you can see just how large those are. But there are still plenty of posing options. And this figure seems especially tight. Actually, both of the emissaries seem tight. So some people may want to heat up those joints. I'm not going to. An unfortunate reality of being a figure reviewer is that every once in a while you break a figure, and I've broken far too many this year, so I am going to be careful here because I really appreciate this work by NECA. I can't wait to see these emissaries with my other Predator figures. This paint work is just outstanding. Let's get a closer look at these unmasked head sculpts. And you can see that the detail here is just phenomenal. I really like this bluish and purple paint combination. And I'm going to increase the light here to give you an even better view of the eyes and the mandibles. And the detail here is just amazing. Look at all that. They look very sharp. And the skin, despite the color, it still looks very realistic. And here's a look at the predlocks. I really like that paint choice. And here's a look at Emissary 2. A very different type of look. The mandibles are drawn in. And then we get this blue and black paint combination up here. So I am really impressed by the color palettes for both of these figures. Now let's have a look at the Fugitive Predator. And the color palette on this figure is the most impressive of the three. There's lots of golds and silver, grays, and browns. By the way, these armor pieces are separate pieces. They're not just sculpted on. But look at all of the color here. It's very eye-popping. Here's a look underneath the loincloth. There's very intricate paint detail that runs throughout this figure. And here's a look at the abdomen. Now the netting is sculpted on. That's not separate. But you can see this armor, how visually pleasing that looks. And here is the plasma caster. Once again, be very careful in this area. It feels like it could break very easily. As you can see, this Yautja was armored up. He had to know that a clash with the upgrade Predator was coming. Here's a closer look at the biomask. There's plenty of sculpting detail on this. Just like with the Emissary figures, there are some articulation issues with the neck joint, and part of that is due to the predlocks. But look at all of this paint detail on the back here. That silver looks really good. You can see the light dancing off of it. The forearm gauntlets have been painted silver and then a dark wash applied over that, and they look very realistic. These arms pop off right underneath the elbow joints, and that will leave you with these exposed pegs. The double blades port into these two grooves within the forearm gauntlets. And the elbow pegs port into this alternate set of arms, and you can see the masterful paintwork on these as well. So here is a look at Emissary 2 with the alternate biomask head sculpt. And you can see this works really well with this military motif. I was able to change out this head with only a moderate amount of difficulty. However, that was not the case with Emissary 1. As I was attempting to change out the head, I started to hear some grinding sounds, and I got a considerable amount of resistance. Now, some people would have just gone forward and tried to force the head off, but I am not going to do that in this situation. However, to give you an idea of what this would look like, here is Emissary 1's biomask head sculpt on Emissary 2's body. And here are the figures holding the rifle accessories, and in both cases, these are a snug fit into the gripping hands. And the trigger fingers actually go onto the triggers, so this is a very realistic look, and I am appreciative of that as well. Here are the emissaries ready to duke it out, each with their respective pair of fists. Let's have a look at articulation now. The feet move backward and forward at the ankle joint. They also swivel from side to side, as does the knee. There are double jointed knees, and this will allow you to get the figure into a deep running pose, as you see here. The figure can only kick forward this far. Again, the hips feel pretty tight. He does step back somewhat, so I'm thankful for that. There are ratchet joints in the hips, so you can articulate them out to the sides this much. The waist pivots back and forth, although it is very tight. Likewise, the upper torso is tight. I can only get him to crunch forward that much and rock back that much. There's rotation at the wrists, and the hands move backward and forward on the pegs. There are double jointed elbows, but once again, these are very tight, and I can feel so much pressure here. This makes me really nervous. The arms can only raise up from the sides this much. Once again, this shoulder piece becomes an issue. Although there is 360 degrees of rotation, the elbows also rotate. The head can move side to side. Once again, these predlocks create resistance. There's a minimal amount of movement up and down, and there's a minor amount of head tilting. So that's a look at Emissary 1. Emissary 2's joints are even tighter. I can move the feet backward and forward at the ankle joint. They do swivel from side to side, as do the knees. The figure has double jointed knees, so you can get him into a deep running pose, but I can only get him to kick forward this far, and he does step back a little better than Emissary 1. Once again, we have the ratchet joints here, and the legs articulate out to the sides this much. Once again, there's resistance from the hip piece, and even getting the legs to go back into position is difficult. The waist is very tight, although I can get this figure to rock back this much, so I'm thankful for that. And the figure can crunch forward this much. There's rotation at both of the wrists, and they move backward and forward on the peg. Once again, this figure has double jointed elbows. Although these are very tight, I get resistance as soon as I move these. The elbows do rotate, so that gives you posing options, and I'm thankful for that. Once again, the arms are difficult to raise up from the sides, as you can see. But once again, you can do a 360. The head moves side to side. There's a minimal amount of movement up and down, and a minor amount of head tilting. So that's a look at the articulation on these two figures. In terms of the Fugitive Predator, the feet move backward and forward at the ankle joint. Once again, there is swiveling at the ankle and the knee joint as well. He has double jointed knees, so you can get him into a running pose. He can kick forward that far, and he can step back considerably, and the ratchet joints here allow him to do a full split, so that is impressive. The waist works much better than on the other two figures, as does the upper torso. It's not perfect, but there's much more swiveling. There's rotation at both of the wrists. They move backward and forward. He has double jointed elbows. The elbows can rotate from side to side, as you can see. You can move the arms forward this much and backward this much. Once again, we have a shoulder piece that limits the articulation out from the side. In terms of the head sculpt, the head moves fairly easily from side to side. There's a minimal amount of movement up and down, and once again, there's a minor amount of head tilting. There is articulation on the plasma caster, but once again, this is a very small, very fragile piece. I would not put any pressure on this, but as you can see, you can move it backward and forward. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this review, and please tell all of your friends about this channel. I would certainly appreciate it. And I'll be back with more Predator content soon. But until we meet again, this has been the Emerald Enthusiast, and thanks for watching.